For years, nuclear weapons felt like a background risk, something dangerous but distant. That sense of stability is starting to change. Arms control treaties are ending, trust between major powers is eroding, and the term nuclear arms race is being used again by serious analysts, not because war is imminent, but because the rules that once limited risk are disappearing. Welcome to Prepper's Paradigm, your channel dedicated to practical prepping and disaster preparedness. I use a computer-generated voice as my own is hard to understand due to an injury. This video is not about predicting nuclear war, and it is not about fallout maps or bunker fantasies. It is about understanding what a modern nuclear arms race actually looks like, how it could affect the world over time, and what that means for preppers who focus on realistic, long-term preparedness. A nuclear arms race does not start with missiles flying. It starts with fewer limits, less transparency, and more uncertainty. Those conditions increase the chance of escalation during crises and place strain on systems people rely on every day, from energy and supply chains to emergency response. In this video, we will break down what a nuclear arms race looks like today, why it matters even if conflict never happens, and how preppers should think about preparation in a world that is becoming less predictable, not overnight, but steadily. When most people hear the term nuclear arms race, they picture the Cold War, endless missile silos, massive stockpiles of warheads, and constant threats of global annihilation. That image is powerful, but it is also outdated. Today's nuclear competition looks very different. There is no public race to build thousands of new weapons, and there are no dramatic announcements of record-breaking arsenals. Instead, the changes are quieter and easier to miss, which is part of what makes them dangerous. Modern nuclear competition is about flexibility and speed rather than sheer numbers. Existing weapon systems can be adjusted, upgraded, or expanded without building anything new. New delivery systems are designed to reduce warning times and complicate decision-making. At the same time, there is less transparency about what each side is doing. This gap between expectation and reality matters. When risks are harder to see, they're also harder to manage. A nuclear arms race today is less about spectacle and more about uncertainty, and uncertainty is where mistakes tend to happen. A modern nuclear arms race is not about who can build the most weapons. It is about who can respond faster, strike more reliably, and survive a first move in a crisis. Those priorities shape how nuclear forces are developed today. One key element is warhead expansion without new missiles. Many existing missiles can carry more warheads than they currently do. Without treaty limits, those warheads can be added quickly, increasing destructive capability without obvious public signals. This makes changes harder to track and easier to misinterpret. Another element is new delivery systems. Hypersonic weapons and modernized missiles are designed to reduce warning time and bypass defenses. While often described as stabilizing, they also compress decision-making timelines. Leaders may have minutes instead of hours to assess whether an alert is real or a mistake. Tactical nuclear weapons add another layer of risk. These smaller weapons are intended for limited use, but their presence lowers the threshold between conventional and nuclear conflict. In a fast-moving crisis, that distinction can break down. Taken together, these changes explain why analysts are concerned. A modern nuclear arms race increases uncertainty rather than clarity. When speed increases and transparency decreases, the risk of escalation does not come from intent alone, but from miscalculation under pressure. Even without a single missile being launched, a nuclear arms race can have real and lasting effects on daily life. Heightened strategic competition tends to ripple outward, affecting systems that most people take for granted. One of the first areas to feel pressure is energy. Rising geopolitical tension often leads to market volatility, supply disruptions, and higher prices. Energy insecurity feeds into transportation costs, food production, and manufacturing, compounding existing economic stress. Global supply chains are also vulnerable. When trust between major powers breaks down, trade restrictions, sanctions, and political uncertainty become more common. This can slow the movement of goods, reduce availability of critical items, and make shortages harder to predict or resolve. Government priorities tend to shift during periods of strategic tension. Resources are redirected toward defense and national security, sometimes at the expense of infrastructure maintenance, disaster response, or public communication. Information may become more limited or less clear, making it harder for individuals to understand what is happening in real time. The key point is that nuclear risk does not exist in isolation. It amplifies other stresses already present in the system. For preppers, these indirect effects are far more likely than a direct nuclear event, and they are the areas where preparedness makes the biggest difference. A renewed nuclear arms race does not mean nuclear war is inevitable. There is no evidence that any major power is actively seeking a large-scale nuclear conflict. Deliberate use remains unlikely because the consequences are understood by everyone involved. That said, the risk profile has changed. The danger comes less from intent and more from escalation and miscalculation. When warning times are shorter, transparency is reduced, and communication channels are strained, the chance of mistakes increases. History shows that several close calls occurred even when arms control agreements were in place. Crises rarely unfold in isolation. A conventional conflict, political standoff, or major accident can escalate more easily in an environment where nuclear forces are on higher alert and assumptions replace verified information. In those moments, decisions may be made quickly and under extreme pressure. For preppers, this distinction matters. The concern is not planning for an imminent nuclear exchange, but recognizing that the global system is more fragile than it was before. Increased fragility means shocks can spread faster and be harder to contain, even if the worst outcome never occurs. Preparing for a nuclear arms race does not mean preparing for nuclear war in the way it is often portrayed. It does not require building bunkers, buying extreme gear, or planning for a single catastrophic event. In most cases, that kind of preparation is misplaced and inefficient. A nuclear arms race increases background instability rather than immediate danger. That instability shows up as economic shocks, infrastructure strain, supply disruptions, and slower responses to emergencies. Preparing for those effects means strengthening the basics that matter in almost every crisis. Reliable food storage, access to clean water, and backup power become more valuable when systems are under stress. Redundancy matters more than specialization. Having multiple ways to meet basic needs is far more useful than preparing for one unlikely scenario. Information resilience is also important. During periods of heightened tension, official messaging can be delayed, unclear, or inconsistent. Being able to assess information calmly, avoid panic, and filter noise from credible signals is a form of preparedness in its own right. Ultimately, preparing for a nuclear arms race is about adaptability. It is about recognizing that the world is becoming less predictable and adjusting plans accordingly. The goal is not to prepare for the worst day imaginable, but to remain stable and capable through a wide range of disruptions. A nuclear arms race is not a standalone threat. It is part of a broader pattern of rising global instability that includes economic pressure, cyber threats, energy insecurity, and political tension. These risks overlap and reinforce one another, which is why an all-hazards approach to preparedness remains the most effective strategy. The same preparations that help during storms, power outages, or supply disruptions also help in a world shaped by strategic competition. Strong fundamentals reduce vulnerability across many scenarios, including those driven by geopolitical events far beyond local control. Preparedness is not about predicting which crisis will happen next. It is about staying adaptable when conditions change. As guardrails disappear at the global level, personal resilience becomes more important, not less. A renewed nuclear arms race does not mean disaster is inevitable. It does mean the world is becoming harder to predict. For preppers, the response is steady, informed preparation, not fear, not obsession, and not complacency. If you found this useful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Visit preppersparadigm.com for more prepping news, information, and guides. Thanks for watching Prepper's Paradigm. Stay safe and stay prepared.